You're fired, Elias. The words, cold and final, echoed in Arthur Sterling's penthouse office overlooking Chicago. He slid a thick envelope across the polished mahogany. A generous severance for your 20 years of loyalty, and of course, for your silence. He smirked, confident he'd just buried his problem. He saw me as a loose end, neatly tied up. A pawn swept from the board. What Arthur couldn't see was the notification on my phone, a silent confirmation from a secure server. An hour ago, a 10-gigabyte file package detailing his entire securities fraud operation had been delivered. The recipient? Special Agent Miller at the FBI. He thought my silence was bought. The truth was, it was never for sale. I walked out of that office without looking back, the severance envelope feeling like a tombstone in my hand. 20 years at Omni-Financial, gone in 20 seconds. I'm Elias Vance. At 46, I was supposed to be a lifer, the guy who knew every SEC regulation by heart. I wasn't a high-flying trader. I was the firm's foundation, the numbers man who ensured everything balanced. For 2 decades, I believed in the system Arthur had built because I helped build it. Then, 6 months ago, I found the flaw. It wasn't a bug in the code. It was a cancer woven into the company's DNA. Billions siphoned through ghost accounts. Life savings gambled away in shadow trades. Arthur called it an aggressive growth strategy. I called it grand larceny. He thought my loyalty was to him. He was wrong. My loyalty was to the simple, unwavering truth of the numbers. And when those numbers scream theft, you don't stay silent. You don't take the blood money. He thought firing me was the end of the story. He had no idea he'd just turned the page to the final chapter. The whole thing began 6 months ago, not with a bang, but with a penny. A single, insignificant cent that shouldn't have been there. In a multi-billion-dollar ledger, it was less than a rounding error. But to me, it was a discordant note in a perfect symphony. I spent 3 days tracking it. Everyone thought I was crazy. Let it go, Elias, my colleagues would say. But I couldn't. The systems I helped design were flawless. There were no ghosts in my machine. When I finally traced its origin, it led me to a sub-account I'd never seen before, coded with an old, obsolete project name, Project Nightingale. I brought it to Arthur, expecting a simple explanation. He was in his office, practicing his putting on the plush carpet. "A legacy account, Elias," he said, not even looking up as he lined up his shot. "Probably a data migration artifact. Just zero it out and forget about it." He was so casual, so dismissive, but there was a flicker in his eyes, a microsecond of something that wasn't boredom. It was alarm. He sank the putt. "You worry too much," he added with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's why you're the best." His praise felt like a warning. That night, I went home, but I didn't sleep. I logged into the system remotely, using back-end credentials I'd created for myself years ago for emergencies. This felt like an emergency. I didn't search for Nightingale. I searched for its architecture, its digital signature, and I found it. Not once, but hundreds of times. Buried under layers of encryption, each one a phantom account, a digital siphon. For weeks I lived a double life. By day, I was Elias Vance, the reliable numbers guy. By night, I was an archaeologist, digging through 2 decades of digital sediment. The picture that emerged was terrifying. Arthur wasn't just skimming. He was running a shadow bank inside Omni-Financial. He was using client funds, retirement portfolios, college savings accounts, as collateral for high-risk, off-the-books trades. When he won, the profits vanished into Nightingale accounts. When he lost, the losses were socialized, absorbed into the firm's legitimate operating costs, disguised as market fluctuations. I saw the names on the accounts he was pillaging. The Hendersons, who brought me a box of donuts every Christmas. Mr. Chen, a widower who trusted me with his late wife's life insurance payout. Arthur wasn't just stealing numbers on a screen. He was stealing futures. He was stealing lives. And he was using the very system I had helped build to do it. The betrayal was a physical weight, settling deep in my chest. He thought my loyalty was to him. But standing there, in the cold blue light of my monitor at 3 a.m., I knew my loyalty was to the Hendersons, to Mr. Chen, and to that single stubborn penny that refused to be ignored. The knowledge was a poison. Every morning I'd walk into Omni-Financial, shake hands with Arthur, and sit at my desk, feeling like a ghost haunting my own life. The numbers on my screen weren't data anymore. They were victims. Each digit in those Nightingale accounts represented a broken promise, a stolen dream. For a month, I did nothing. I was paralyzed by the scale of it, by the sheer audacity of a man I had trusted for 2 decades. I thought about going to the board, but I knew who sat on it. Arthur's college roommates, his golfing buddies. They were acolytes, not watchdogs. The system wasn't broken. It was built this way. The turning point came during the quarterly town hall. Arthur stood on stage, a vision of corporate success, talking about client-centric values and unwavering integrity. He pointed to a chart showing record profits, profits I now knew were built on lies. In the audience, I saw Mrs. Henderson, there for a meeting with her advisor. She smiled at me, a warm, trusting smile. In that moment, the paralysis shattered. It wasn't about loyalty to a company anymore. It was about loyalty to her. That night, my mission began. I bought a set of encrypted, solid-state drives, the kind journalists use. My quiet suburban home became a war room. Every night, after my wife and kids were asleep, I'd log back into the Omni-Financial servers. My heart hammered against my ribs with every keystroke. I wasn't a spy. I was an accountant, but I moved with a new kind of precision, a cold fury guiding my fingers. I copied everything. Ledgers, transaction histories, encrypted emails between Arthur and his offshore contacts. I created a digital breadcrumb trail so clear a child could follow it. Each file transfer felt like a heist, stealing back the truth. One night, I nearly lost everything. It was 2 a.m., and I was deep in the server archives when my office phone rang. Not my desk phone, my private line. I froze. The caller ID was Arthur's home number. I let it ring, my blood turning to ice. It rang 5 times, then stopped. A minute later, a text lit up my phone. Asterisk, saw your remote access active. Burning the midnight oil, old friend? Hope you're focusing on the Q3 projections, nothing else. It wasn't a question, it was a threat, wrapped in a friendly text. He knew, or he suspected. He was watching me. I realized then that I couldn't hold on to this data as a weapon. A weapon can be taken away. Evidence, once delivered, is permanent. I had to get the files out now. I spent the next 48 hours researching. I found an article about a Chicago FBI agent, Special Agent Miller, who had taken down a hedge fund manager for a nearly identical scheme. He was a bulldog, relentless. He was my guy. I created a multi-layered anonymous email account and a secure file drop protocol. I wrote a simple 2-sentence message. The evidence is attached. It speaks for itself. With the files compressing, I knew what my last move had to be. I couldn't just disappear. That would raise too many red flags. Arthur would lock everything down, erase the servers. I had to make him think he had won. I had to play the fool, the disgruntled employee who got greedy and overplayed his hand. I would hint that I knew, let him fire me, let him hand me that severance check like a trophy. It was the only way to make him feel safe. The only way to ensure he wouldn't look over his shoulder until the moment Agent Miller knocked on his penthouse door. I clicked, send, M. The upload bar filled, and my 20 years of loyalty were officially transferred to the United States Department of Justice. I walked through the glass-walled halls of Omni-Financial, not as a man who had lost his career, but as a ghost visiting his own grave. The whispers started instantly, a ripple of schadenfreude and fear. Heads that would have nodded in respect just an hour ago now stayed buried in spreadsheets. Eyes that would have sought my advice now studied the ceiling with intense interest. They saw a man disgraced, escorted out by the specter of his own failure. They had no idea they were looking at a man who had just set a 10-gigabyte bomb under their king. My desk was already being sterilized. A junior IT tech, a kid I'd helped get hired, was wiping my hard drive, avoiding my gaze. My nameplate was gone. My security pass was already deactivated. 20 years of my life, erased with chilling corporate efficiency. Sarah, a young analyst I'd mentored, approached cautiously. Elias, I heard. I'm so sorry, she stammered. I looked at her, at the genuine concern in her eyes, a rare commodity on this floor. "Don't be," I said, my voice even and calm. "Just remember why we do this." I tapped a finger on a framed photo she kept on her desk. Her parents. For them, it was the only sermon I had left to give. I didn't need a box for my things. The only thing of value in that office was the truth, and I already had my copy. Everything else, the plaques, the awards, the hollow symbols of loyalty, I had left behind. They belonged to a different man. In the elevator, alone at last, the silence was absolute. I held the severance envelope Arthur had given me. It felt heavy, not with money, but with intent. It was his proof of purchase for my soul. He thought he was buying my silence, but all he'd done was create a paper trail for his own obstruction of justice. A final, arrogant mistake. I didn't open it. I slipped it into my coat pocket. It wasn't mine. It belonged to Agent Miller, as Exhibit A. The elevator doors opened, and the roar of Chicago hit me. The cold wind off the lake felt like a baptism. For the first time in 6 months, I could breathe. I wasn't an employee anymore. I was a witness. I pulled out my phone and sent a text to my wife. Asterisk, on my way home, picking up that pizza you like. Normalcy. It was the one thing Arthur couldn't touch. He was probably pouring a glass of scotch in his penthouse, toasting his brilliant maneuver. Let him. He was a dead man celebrating his own wake. The clock wasn't ticking anymore. The timer had hit 0. All that was left was the fallout. The biting Chicago wind did little to cool the fire in my veins. My first instinct was to go home, to see my wife Laura, to hug my kids and pretend this was just another Tuesday. But that was the instinct of Elias Vance, the accountant. The witness had to be smarter. Arthur was arrogant, but a cornered animal is unpredictable. He might have someone watching me, a discreet private investigator, just to ensure his severance was money well spent. I didn't hail a cab. I walked 2 blocks, my pace steady, and descended into the noise and chaos of the L train. I swiped my transit card and blended into the afternoon crowd, just another man in a suit heading home. But I wasn't going home. I rode the Brown Line north for 3 stops, got off, crossed the platform, and immediately boarded a southbound train. I did it again at the next major junction, a human pinball, careening through the city's arteries until I was certain I was just another anonymous face in the crowd. An hour later, I stepped out of a station on the far side of town, in a neighborhood I barely recognized. I walked into a small, grimy convenience store, the kind with dusty shelves and a buzzing fluorescent light. I paid cash for a cheap, prepaid burner phone and a bottle of water. Back on the street, I unwrapped the phone, the cheap, plastic feeling alien in my hands. My own phone, the one with pictures of my family and 20 years of contacts, was now a liability, a tracking device. I powered it off and put it in my pocket. My first call was the hardest. I dialed Laura's number, my thumb hovering over the call button. My heart hammered against my ribs. She answered on the second ring. Elias. I didn't recognize the number. Laura, it's me. Listen to me very carefully. I need you to do exactly as I say, and please, don't ask any questions right now. My voice was low, urgent. Silence on the other end, then, what's wrong? You sound... I'm fine. We're all fine. I lied. But I need you to pack an overnight bag for you and the kids. Then I need you to drive to your sister's house. Tell her you decided to visit for a couple of days. Can you do that for me? Right now. Elias, you're scaring me. Did something happen at work? I'll explain everything tonight. I promise. I just need you to be safe. Please, Laura, trust me. I could hear the fear in her breath, but she knew me. In 20 years of marriage, I had never been this man. She knew it had to be serious. Okay, she whispered. Okay, Elias, we'll be there. Be safe. I love you, I said, and ended the call before my resolve could break. My family was moving. The board was now a little clearer. My second call was to the Chicago field office of the FBI. I navigated a bland, automated menu until I reached a human operator. I need to speak with Special Agent Miller, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. Who's calling, please? He won't know my name. Tell him it's about a package he received this morning. Tell him it's about Project Nightingale." I was put on hold. The tinny music felt like a soundtrack to a B-movie, completely at odds with the gravity of the moment. After what felt like an eternity, a new voice came on the line. Sharp, tired, no nonsense. "This is Miller." "You got my files," I said. A brief pause. "Who is this?" "The man who sent them." "I have more. I have the severance check he just gave me to buy my silence." I could almost hear the gears turning on the other end of the line. "That's a bold claim. It's in an envelope in my pocket. He fired me an hour ago. He thinks he's won." Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you?" "I can be anywhere. Let's meet." "Public place. No fanfare." "Harold Washington Library," Miller said instantly. "Third floor, north study room. 30 minutes. How will I know you?" "I'll be the one who looks like his life just ended and started again in the same afternoon," I said. "And I'll be reading a book on federal tax code." A dry chuckle from Miller. "I'll be the one who's interested. Don't be late." He hung up. The library was an ocean of calm. The hushed whispers and the scent of old paper were a world away from Arthur's sterile office. I found a secluded carrel and pulled a thick, intimidating tax law book from a shelf. It felt appropriate. I opened it and stared at the dense text, not reading a single word. My life had become a series of numbers and codes, and I was about to translate them. A man sat down in the chair opposite me. He wasn't what I expected. He was maybe 50, with thinning hair, glasses, and a rumpled tweed jacket that had seen better days. He looked more like a history professor than a federal agent. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice a low murmur that wouldn't carry past the bookshelf. He didn't offer a hand. "Agent Miller." "You've had a busy day," he stated, his eyes scanning me, assessing. "My analysts are still decrypting the first layer of your files. They're comprehensive." "It's 20 years of my life," I said, "and his crimes." I reached into my coat, slowly, and placed the thick severance envelope on the table between us. "He gave me this not 2 hours ago, told me it was for my silence." Miller didn't touch it. He just stared at it. "Did you say anything to him? Threaten him?" I told him I couldn't ignore the numbers anymore. I let him think I was a disgruntled employee looking for a payday. I needed him to fire me. I needed him to feel secure, so he wouldn't start shredding the digital archives. He thinks this, I tapped the envelope, is the end of his problem. Miller leaned forward slightly, a flicker of something, not quite a smile, but a predator's satisfaction in his eyes. He has no idea that this just became the easiest charge to prove, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. The fraud case will take months to build. This we can use to hold him while we do it. He didn't just give you a check, Mr. Vance, he handed us the nail for his own coffin. His eyes held mine across the table. The tweed jacket and tired expression were a facade. Underneath was a hunter who had just cornered his prey. "Here's what happens now," Miller said, his voice dropping even lower. "You're going to walk out of this library, and you're going to disappear. We have a place for you. You'll be debriefed, and you won't contact anyone. Not your wife, not your friends. We'll handle communication with your family. From this moment on, you are a material witness in a federal investigation. Your old life is over, Elias. Are you ready for that?" I thought of Laura and the kids, safe at her sister's house. I thought of Mrs. Henderson's trusting smile. "It's been over for 6 months," I replied. "I'm ready to start a new one." He nodded once, a gesture of finality. He slid a new burner phone across the table, still in its plastic wrap. "This is your only line now. My number is the only one in it. The envelope stays with me." The next 24 hours were a blur of sterile rooms and quiet men in dark suits. I was moved to a corporate apartment in a nondescript high-rise with a view of a brick wall. It was an antechamber to a new life, a place without a past or a future. I sat on a beige sofa, watching a local news channel with the sound off. The city moved on outside my window, oblivious. I felt like a man watching a movie of his own life, waiting for the climax he had written himself. It happened just after the market opened the next day. The news channel cut from a story about city council to a live shot from a helicopter. The camera zoomed in on the familiar glass facade of the Omni-Financial Tower. My building, my office, my prison. A crawl at the bottom of the screen read, times FBI raids downtown financial firm. My burner phone buzzed. An unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. It was Sarah, the young analyst. Her voice was a terrified whisper, the chaos of the trading floor a roaring sea behind her. Elias? Oh my God, they're everywhere. FBI agents. They're walking through the rows, telling everyone to step away from their computers. Sarah, you shouldn't be calling me, I said, my voice tight. I know, I'm sorry, but… Arthur. They walked right into his office. We could all see through the glass. He was on a call and he just laughed at them. He told them to get out, called his lawyer. Her breath hitched. Then they showed him the warrant. Elias, I've never seen a man's face change like that. It was like his whole world just dissolved. The arrogance, the confidence, it all just fell away. I stood up, gripping the phone, my knuckles white. I could picture it perfectly. Arthur Sterling, the master of the universe, suddenly realizing the universe had a new master. They're walking him out now, Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. In handcuffs. They're walking him right past my desk. He looked right at me. His eyes were empty. He knows, Elias. He knows it was you. The line went dead. I stared at the television. There he was. The helicopter shot was shaky, but it was unmistakable. Arthur Sterling, my boss, my mentor, my nemesis, being led out of the building he built on lies. His perfectly tailored suit was rumpled. His head was down. He looked small, defeated. He wasn't a titan of industry anymore. He was just a criminal, blinking in the harsh morning light. A new text message appeared on my burner phone. It was from Miller. 2 words. Asterisk, it's done. I walked over to the window and looked at the brick wall. I hadn't sought revenge. Revenge is an emotional, messy act. This was different. This was an equation. For 2 decades, Arthur had unbalanced the ledger, stealing from the innocent to enrich himself. All I had done was correct the math. This wasn't revenge. It was justice. A quiet, brutal, and perfectly balanced calculation. And as I stood there in the silent room, the ghost of my former life, I felt the weight of that single, misplaced penny finally lift from my soul. The books were balanced. At last. The 2 words on the screen, "It's done," didn't bring a cheer to my lips. There was no surge of triumphant adrenaline, only a profound and sudden quiet. The silence in the beige apartment was heavier than the roar of the trading floor had ever been. I had toppled a king, dismantled an empire of deceit, but I felt no elation. I felt empty. My career, my reputation, the life I had meticulously built for 2 decades, all of it was collateral damage. A ghost in a safe house, watching the world through a television screen. My burner phone rang an hour later. It was Miller. His voice was different, the professional tension replaced by a weary satisfaction. The press is calling it the biggest white-collar bust in a decade, he said, skipping any pleasantries. Arthur Sterling is singing. Not a song, more like a desperate, off-key scream. He's trying to throw everyone under the bus to save himself. Will it work? I asked, my voice raspy. No. Your files were a kill shot. We have everything, Elias. The offshore accounts, the transaction logs, the encrypted emails. He can't lie his way out of numbers. Your numbers. He paused, and I heard the rustle of papers. We executed a freeze on the Nightingale accounts this morning. Over $3 billion. It's going to be a long process, but that money is going back where it belongs, to the people he stole it from. That was it. That was the moment. It wasn't about seeing Arthur in handcuffs or my name being cleared someday. It was about the numbers on the other side of the ledger. Mrs. Henderson's retirement. Mr. Chen's future. The thousands of others I would never know. I thought of the framed photo on Sarah's desk, of her parents, Dinagal Simdax, for them. Thank you for telling me that, I said, my voice thick with an emotion I couldn't name. It wasn't joy. It was closer to relief, the feeling of a heavy debt finally being paid. "No, Mr. Vance," Miller said, and for the first time I heard something like respect in his tone. "Thank you. You lost everything to make this right. Most people wouldn't." He was right. I had lost everything, my name, my career, my home, but standing there, in that empty room, I realized I hadn't. I had lost a life built on a lie to reclaim the one thing that was truly mine, my integrity. The victory wasn't loud. It was the quiet hum of a balanced scale. Here's a tough one for the comments. Is there a moral duty to expose illegal activity at work, even if you know it will cost you your job?